Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mansoor Javidan, and this is our second live session. We have a number of things planned for the session today. We have a number of questions from students that I'd like to try to answer. And then I would like to do a debrief of your own global mindset feedback reports. As you recall, we sent you an invitation to complete the GMI, and you have received your own feedback reports. And now I'm going to debrief it and explain to you the profile means. But first, I'm going to start with questions. Ask you, the students, if you have any questions that you'd like me to answer right now, you can type it in, and my colleagues, Yashwan and Erica, are with us. They will manage the question side. Looking at whatever questions you might type in, I'd like to answer a few questions that have been posted by some of you a while back. I'm going to start with a question about GMI items. One student wrote, would you say that there are top 5 or a top 10 list of GMI instrument questions that most global business people need to pay attention to be effective when doing business in a different region of the world today? We have actually done a lot of analysis on this particular question, and I'm happy to tell you that we have an answer. Of the 50 items, 50 questions you completed in the GMI, there are some specific items that are critical. And what I mean by critical is that using our statistical analyses, these items have proven to be the most important in statistical terms for managers to know. The good news is they are all related to intellectual capital. And I'm going to read these questions. The number one question in terms of the statistical power of the question is how much you know about the geography, history, and important persons of several countries. In other words, as part of your cosmopolitan outlook, how familiar are you with different cultures, different political systems, etc.? The second question, how much you know about the major religions of the world and their influence on society? The third question, how much you know about the economic and political issues, concerns, and hot topics in different parts of the world. Question number 4, how much you know about the history, political structure, and cultural values of several countries. And question number 5, how frequently do you discuss the economic and political ramifications of world events with friends and colleagues? So these are the top 5 questions in terms of their statistical relevance. Statistically speaking, these questions are the most important. Now, what I'm going to do for this course is I'm going to actually post the list of top 10 questions for everybody who are interested in. So, but I read the top 5 because the question asked, what are the top 5? So that's the answer to your question. They're all part of Cosmopolitan Outlook, which is an element in intellectual capital. Okay, now the second question. I live in a society where the communication style is direct, comma, Germany. However, I have an impression that instead of the direct communication, there's very often no communication. People often protect the information they have. They do not share it. Sometimes the reason is just being too busy, but sometimes it is because they treat information as something valuable, their experience, their work, and they would not want to give it to me so easily. Could you please give me a tip how to deal with it? Thank you. Okay, so you are quite right that our work and other researchers' work have shown that German culture is typically more direct communication. People in Germany tend to prefer, in general, to speak directly. But the question you raise is really something a little different. In some organizations, people have the view that information is power. And sharing that information until explicitly they're asked for it, sharing that information may give away some of my power. Therefore, I retain it unless I have to, absolutely have to provide that information. This is not necessarily a national cultural issue. You may be experiencing an organizational culture that is more political, and therefore information becomes the currency for power, and people are hesitant to provide it. So if I'm understanding your question correctly, I would point out that the specific organization where you happen to be working may be politically oriented, and as a result, people are behaving that way. But in Germany, in general, ordinary people, as a national cultural phenomenon, they tend to be more direct when they speak, which means they tend to speak their mind more easily than people who are from indirect cultures. Now, question 2, are there further courses where one can deepen the knowledge in global communication? I know there are books to be read, but I prefer much more taking a course if there is a further one available. I'm afraid I don't know of another course that is the next step, a more advanced course in global communication online. So my answer is, as far as I know, there is not another more advanced course. The other topics which would interest me are motivation. Now, we happen to be offering, Thunderbird has an online course by my colleague, Professor Christine Pearson, which is on leading people. And in that course, they talk about motivating people from different cultures. So that would be my suggestion, at least as a starting point. There are online courses offered in global leadership, but I would, if I were in your shoes, I would start with Thunderbird course offered by Professor Kristen Pearson. And then the student goes on asking about courses on intuition and studies about the brain. I personally am not familiar with any courses, but I would go to 2 places, 2 universities, and check their online offerings. One is MIT, and the other one is Johns Hopkins University. They may be offering courses in the subjects that you are interested in. My guess is there must be a lot of courses on studies about the brain. That shouldn't be hard to find. But also, I would recommend, if these are the topics you're interested in, go to TED Talks and search for these topics. There may be 1 hour, 90-minute presentations by experts on these topics that may be of interest to you. Okay, now the last question that this person is asking, German way of communicating is direct. The area where the language gets very indirect, where coding takes place, is writing or receiving a reference letter. If it is written, for example, an employee has worked always to the fullest satisfaction of the employer, it means the employer was very satisfied with the work done. Removing the word always would mean moderate satisfaction, and removing to the fullest means not satisfied. Are there other countries where coding is used in other areas? How to translate such cultural phenomenon in an international context? You're absolutely right about coding. In German culture, as you know, strong words are used to emphasize the message. In a number of other cultures, coding does exist. In the American English, the coding is in the form of using strong positive words. Excellent, great, fantastic. These are words that you would typically hear in American language. So if somebody is evaluating another person's performance and not using these strong positive adjectives, there is a message in it that the person's performance may not be very good, or that the person needs to improve the performance. So that's an example of coding in American English. But many other languages and many other cultures have coding because that's a way for people to communicate. For example, in some Middle Eastern cultures, the coding is heavily towards in-group concepts. So if you're my friend, I use very strong language, a very strong positive language to communicate my support for you, my privilege of knowing you, my privilege of helping you. So you would see a lot of strong language in that sense, but only among close friends. Now, your last part is, how do you translate such language? Unfortunately, there is no simple algorithm for that. It comes with experience, and it comes with the understanding that you are showing here by identifying these coding issues. The best way that I know of is learning either through direct experience, or if you're meeting someone from another culture and you don't know much about that culture and that culture's communication style, I would just start asking questions to that person, asking him or her to tell me, how do people communicate? So if somebody is doing a good job, how is that performance evaluated? How is it communicated? If somebody's unhappy about another person's behavior, how is it communicated? What are typical words that are used in your language in day-to-day communication? So those are the kinds of questions that I would ask to try to understand the coding in a particular language and culture. Okay, so that covers that's the questions. Now, before I move on, my colleagues, Erica, Yashwant, any questions that you have received?
Yes, we have an additional question that says, how does it affect people of a different mother tongue, poor language acquisition, that end up using an interpreter? This question was raised since sometimes I work as an interpreter due to poor English proficiency around me.
Okay, can you repeat the first part of the question? I want to make sure I understand the question. So the person who is asking the question is a translator.
Yes, an interpreter, yes.
An interpreter, all right.
So how does it affect if people have a different mother tongue or language acquisition and then end up using an interpreter?
Mm-hmm. Well, I sometimes make presentations in different countries, China, Japan, etc., where there is an interpreter who translates my presentation. And I always start my presentation by saying, if you like my presentation and if you enjoy it, that means I have very good content. If you don't like it, that means I have a bad translator. So the translator can be a very important person in the communication. The challenge for the translator, for the interpreter, is to make sure that you understand the content of the message, one by the sender of the message, and not the sender is using, the feeling behind it, the cultural roots behind that statement or those statements, and then translate not just the literal words, but all that rich information that informs those words. Translate that in another language. And I know that is not always easy. And that's where an effective interpreter becomes very important. Because if the interpreter doesn't fully understand the cultural milieu or the background or the roots of the message that's being communicated, or if the interpreter is unable to find the proper words in the second language to communicate that rich information, then the communication suffers. Reality is, in many global situations, people do need interpreters because the subject of conversation is too complicated, too sophisticated. So I may have reasonable, simple understanding of a language, but for me to be able to communicate in business setting or in serious professional setting, that may be a risk. So I need a translator and interpreter to help me. So interpreters can play a very important role, and they need to do all of that while they're listening and talking both at the same time. So that's a tough job to do, and that's where effective interpreters can be very helpful. Do we have another question? Yeah, okay. All right, so let me go back to the some of the other questions that other students have asked. There was a question about why was a sample or template for assignment 1 not made available beforehand, since structure definitely was a questionable aspect. With a template, my team would have met your expectations better. Well, this is a 2-credit graduate level course. So we expect the participants, the students, to be able to communicate and articulate their message clearly. This is a graduate level course. We don't need to provide very specific structures. We can provide suggestions, guidelines, but we do not want to limit you to a very specific way of communicating your message. So if the feedback to your report is that you did not communicate effectively, that doesn't mean you need to follow our way of doing things. That means you did not communicate effectively, and you receive feedback on how to do it better. But as a graduate level course, I would not want to limit my students' freedom to find a way to best communicate their message. Let me see. There are a couple of other questions. There was a question about the word limit. Why is there a word limit? Why is it set at 900 words? The answer is quite simple. As a graduate level student, you need to be concise, and you need to be able to communicate your message in a precise way. That's how it works in the real world, especially in the business world. And we are a business school. So the ability of our students to articulate a message in the most efficient way is really important. That's why there are limits. To force the students to, you can write, you can draft your message, your report, and then act as an editor and clean it up. Ask yourself, do I need every sentence that I have written? What is the information I want to communicate, and what is the most efficient way of communicating? That's part of your job in submitting your reports. There was a question about the time limit for the midterm. I'm actually surprised by that question. Well, of course, any exam has a limited time. So I don't understand why that question is asked. 90 minutes is plenty of time for a typical graduate student to be able to submit their exam. In fact, we do time, the system times the students when they submit their exams. And in every case that I know of, 90 minutes was plenty. It was more than what was needed. So that's why. Let me see. The midterms were primarily focused on the GLOBE project. That's actually not true. The midterm had elements in it that connected the different parts of the course. And that's what it was. So there's a question about why 65% of the total points were up to week 3. Well, because there's a lot of important stuff happening in week 3, that's all. That's the reason. The percentage of the grade represents the importance of the assignments and the work that's been going on in the first 3 weeks. There's a statement there that I don't understand. Total of 65% were set to determine who fails the course by the end of week 3. That's not how I think, and certainly that's not how it's designed. It's not about failing at the course. It's about the material you cover and learn and write about. Why would somebody think about failing? There's no reason to fail. The course is very straightforward, and you're all very smart people, so it shouldn't be an issue at all. Okay, oh, there's an item here. It would be great to be able to engage in conversations with the professor and TA. Yes, it would be great, except in this course right now, there is almost 1,250 students from all over the world. Now think about that. If half of these students decided to talk with the instructor, imagine what would happen. And the professor has a whole bunch of other things to do. This course is not designed to provide immediate, direct communication between the professor and the student. It's designed to have online sessions like this. So if a student has a question, attends the online session, asks a question, we try to answer. In addition to that, we have a very, very competent teaching assistant who is finishing his own graduate degree in global management at Thunderbird School of Global Business. He's a very smart man and very experienced and also very dedicated. So he tries to answer as many questions as possible. So it is not that the professor doesn't want to be engaged, it's just that the realities of this course are such that they put limitations on the connection between the professor and the student. But it doesn't mean there's no connection. As you can see, I'm answering people's questions right now. The TA tries to answer the questions on time as soon as possible. But that's the nature of this course. It's a fully online course. Okay, so that pretty much answers that students' questions. There is one last question. Through this course, would we be able to distinguish in someone's way of communicating? For example, whether it stems from the roots of cultural embedding or from other factors such as educational or personal elements. This is a very important question, and this is something that I addressed, I believe, in the first day, first session of this course, but I want to talk about it. This is still very important. This course is about cross-cultural communication. If you want to understand a person's message, you need to understand how that person is thinking, how that person is interpreting the world, what approach that person is taking in sending a message to you. If you have the answer to those questions, you are much better able to understand the message and the reason behind the message from that person. So now question is, how do we get to find the answer to those questions? Well, this course focuses on national culture as one driver of how a person thinks, how a person sees the world, what approach the person takes in sending a message, and how he or she communicates. But only one variable. The person's personality is another variable. The person's lifetime experiences, childhood experiences, family relations is another variable. The person's educational background is another variable. So in this course, we are only focusing on the relationship between one variable, which is national culture, and the person's approach to communication. It does not mean that the other variables are not important. They're very important. But they're subject of other courses. In our course, we are looking at how national culture impacts the way that people communicate. So, going back, I want to give a direct answer to the question. By learning about someone's cultural background, you increase the probability of your ability to understand that person's communication. Not 100%. You simply increase the probability that you will be able to understand the person's communication style. That's why this course is important. But it doesn't mean that in every case, in dealing with every individual from another culture, you will be able to figure them out just because you know their cultural background. Why? Because there's personality, there's educational background, there's a whole other list of other variables. So we offer this course to increase your ability to understand another person's communication and your own ability to communicate with another person, but not 100%. And thank you for that question. That's a very important question. All right, any other questions? No? All right, so my colleagues tell me there are no other questions, which means we can now go to the feedback report, and I'm going to debrief that report for you. Okay. On the screen, you are now looking at an anonymous feedback report. I'm going to use this report to debrief it. Each one of you who have completed the GMI has received the PDF. So you can open your PDF, and I'm going to use this PDF in front of me that you're looking at to do the debrief. All right, let's go to page 2. On page 2 of your report, at the top, you see what is global mindset. Well, by now you know all of that, but just to refresh your memory, it has 3 dimensions: intellectual capital, psychological capital, and social capital. And this report is designed to show you your own profile in terms of these 3 capitals, plus all the elements that belong to these capitals. Let's go to page 4. On page 4, you are looking at your own profile of global mindset in terms of the 3 capitals. Now, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes explaining this chart. Once you know how to read this chart, all the following charts will follow the same format. So, to begin with, the report is color-coded. So blue always refers to psychological capital, red always refers to social capital, and yellow always refers to intellectual capital. The olive bar is your personal score. Based on the information that you provided when you completed the questionnaire, that is your profile in terms of your psychological capital, your social capital, and your intellectual capital. The olive bar is your personal score. You can see that the olive bar is framed in different colors, blue, red, and yellow, to represent the different capitals. The orange bar is the average of the group. So I'm going to try to go farther down in this report. Can you help me go down a little far? That's how you. So perfect. 8 students. By the time that this report was produced, 8 students had completed the GMI. So the orange bar is the average of the 8 students. The black bar is what we call the grand mean, which is the average of almost 34,000 people who have completed the GMI. Now, who are these 34,000 people? There's about maybe 1,200 CEOs, somewhere between 7,000 and 9,000 vice presidents, senior vice presidents, probably something like 14,000, 15,000 or 12,000, 13,000 middle managers and students. The remaining numbers are masters and MBA students. At Thunderbird and at about 40 other business schools all over the world. Now, you see light gray bars. The light gray bars show you the range between the minimum and the maximum score for each group. So the light gray bar associated with the orange bar shows you the range between the minimum score and the maximum score for the group of students in this course. The light gray bar associated with the black bar shows you the range between the minimum and the maximum score for all of the students who, all of the people who have completed the survey, the grand mean. One last thing about this chart. All of the charts are sorted based on the olive bar. So in this particular case that on the screen, blue is on top, followed by red and yellow, because this individual's personal score was highest on psychological capital, followed by social capital, followed by intellectual capital. The color configuration in your own report may be different depending on what your own personal scores are. So I'm going to stop here and maybe give you a minute. If there are any questions, please type it in. I want to make sure everybody is very clear about how to read and interpret the chart.
We have no other questions at this time.
All right, very good. So let's continue. Let's go to page 5. I'm sure you are now familiar with this page. This is the structure of global mindset, the 3 capitals, and the elements in each capital. And this report will show you your own profile in terms of all the boxes you see on the slide. Now we go to page 6. Page 6 is giving you more information about how we measured your intellectual capital. So global business savvy refers to things like knowledge of global industry, knowledge of global competitive business and marketing strategies, knowledge of how to do business and assess risks of doing business internationally, knowledge of supplier options in other parts of the world. The bullets you see on this page are very important because for every bullet you see on the page, there is at least one question in the questionnaire. Sometimes more than one, but at least one question on the questionnaire. Cosmopolitan outlook refers to such things as your knowledge of cultures in different parts of the world, your knowledge of geography, history, and important persons of several countries, and a few other things. And cognitive complexity refers to your ability to grasp complex concepts quickly, your strong analytical and problem-solving skills, and a few other things. And now let's go to the next page, and you will see your own profile of intellectual capital in terms of the 3 elements. Again, the olive bar is your personal score, and as you can see, they're all the olive bars are framed in yellow because they're part of intellectual capital. I'm going to pause for a few seconds to give you a chance to reflect on your own profile. And again, if there are any questions, just let us know. Let's go to page 8. Page 8 gives you more information about how we measured psychological capital. So passion for diversity refers to how much you enjoy exploring other parts of the world, how much you enjoy getting to know people from other parts of the world, how much you enjoy living in another country, how much you enjoy traveling. Quest for adventure refers to your interest in dealing with challenging situations, your willingness to take risks, your willingness to test one's abilities, and how much you enjoy dealing with unpredictable situations. And self-assurance refers to how energetic you are, how self-confident you are, how comfortable you are in uncomfortable situations, and how witty you are in tough situations. Now let's go to page 9. And here you see your own profile in terms of the 3 elements of psychological capital. Again, I will pause for a few seconds to give you a chance to reflect on your scores. Okay, let's go to page 10. And here you see information about social capital. So intercultural empathy refers to your ability to work well with people from other parts of the world, your ability to understand nonverbal expressions of people from other cultures, your ability to emotionally connect to people from other cultures, your ability to engage people from other parts of the world to work together. Interpersonal impact refers to your experience in negotiating contracts or agreements in other cultures, your strong networks with people from other cultures and with influential people, your reputation as a leader. And diplomacy refers to your ease of starting a conversation with a stranger, your ability to integrate diverse perspectives, your ability to listen to what others have to say, and your willingness to collaborate. Now let's go to next page, page 11, and you will see your own profile in terms of the elements of social capital. Let's go to page 12. Page 12 is a replica of page 4. There is no new information here. We're just reminding you of your own profile in terms of the 3 capitals. Page 13 is the most important page of the report. Here we're showing you your profile of global mindset in terms of the 9 elements. And as you can see, the elements are in colors representing the different capitals. The chart is sorted from your highest score to your lowest score. So here's why this page is important. Basically, we use this page as the beginning of your personal action plan. And this is how you interpret it. If on any dimension your score is between 4 and 5, that means in your own mind, in your own eyes, that particular dimension is a strong suit for you. Now, I emphasize in your own mind and in your own eyes because this is self-assessment. Of course, this questionnaire is available in 360 version where other people get to assess you also. But for this course, we only use the self-assessment. So if your score on any dimension is between 4 and 5, that means in your mind, that is something you're very good at. Now, that you could be very good at it because of your personality, because of your experiences, because of your education, because you've lived in different parts of the world. As a child, you grew up in different parts of the world. All of those reasons. There are many reasons why you could have a strong score on any of these elements. If your score on any element is between 3 and 4, that means you're doing a pretty good job. You're doing a reasonable job. But if you choose, there are many opportunities for improvement. If you feel that this is an area that's really important to you, there are many things to do to improve. If your score is 3 or below on any element, you need to ask yourself 2 questions. The first question is, given, if you are employed, given what you're doing right now in your job, how important or relevant is that element to your success in your current job? If the answer is yes, it's relevant to what I'm doing right now, then you need to make plans for improvement. If the answer is no, in what I'm doing right now, I don't need this, it's not relevant, then you need to ask yourself a second question. And the second question is, given where your company is going, what is the strategy of your company? How important is global expansion for your company? And given your own career plan, where do you want to be 3 to 5 years from now? What kind of a role? What kind of an organization? How important or relevant is this element to your success in getting to where you want to go? If the answer is yes, it will be important for me in terms of my own future plans, then you need to make plans for improvement. If your answer is no, given where I want to be, what kind of a job, what kind of a role, it's not important, then don't worry about it. Doesn't matter that you have a low score, it's irrelevant. You have other things more important to worry about. In other words, receiving a low score on any of these elements does not necessarily mean, oh, time for improvement. A low score on any element means you need to put it in the context of your current job and your future plan, your own career plan. And if that particular element is not relevant to either of these things, doesn't matter. Who cares if you have a low score on any of these elements? Now, if you are a student or if you are just graduating from a program, looking for a job, the question for you is, the type of job you're looking for, the type of employment, the type of responsibility and opportunity you're looking for, how important and relevant are these elements that you have a low score on? And if your answer is no, it's irrelevant, then don't worry about it. If your answer is, yeah, you know, it will help me get a better job or get the kind of a job that I'm really interested in, then you need to make plans for improvement. So that's how this particular chart is the beginning of your action planning, is the beginning of your personal development plan. And that's how you interpret it. I'm going to pause for a few seconds to see if there are any questions or comments.
Not yet, but students, if you could please post additional questions in the discussion forum, because the chat feature is currently disabled at the moment. That would be wonderful, and we will address those questions as they come in. Again, that's the discussion forum for November 13th in the course. We have no further questions at this time.
Thank you. All right, let's go to the next page. Pages 14 and 15 are not really relevant to you because they're group-based scores. And group-based scores don't mean much for you students because you are not working together as a group. The purpose of pages 14 and 15 is when a group of managers working for the same company participate in the survey. Then the group profile becomes important. But for your purposes, it's not important, and I'm not going to spend time on it. Just know that it's just the average score for all the people who completed the survey. Page 16 provides pretty much the same kind of information that you have received, except in numeric form. Because some managers told us they prefer to work with raw numbers than bar charts. So there it is, the raw numbers. The only new information on this page is the percentiles, the 50th percentile, the 75th percentile for the group. Again, it doesn't mean anything to you because you are not a functioning group. You don't work together. But it becomes very relevant when we work with groups of managers in different companies. So there you have it. That's the information in the report. And then pages 17 to 19 are a set of questions that are designed to help you decide on your own personal development plan. These questions are very relevant, and they're structured in a way that you start from question 1 and you go all the way to the end because there's a process that you need to follow. And if you look at the first question, it's about the relevance of all of this to you. Is it relevant to you in what you're doing in your job? Is it relevant to you in terms of what you want to be from 5 years from now? What happens if you don't do anything to improve your global mindset? Will it in any way impact your performance? So the first 2 questions are about the relevance of this material to you. And if your answer to the first and second question is, no, it's not relevant, then you don't bother with the rest of it. But since you are taking this course, I assume it would be relevant to you because of your interest or because of the job you're doing right now. So if you answer yes to the first 2 questions, or if your answer says it is important to you, then the third question wants you to focus on your strengths. It's easy for everyone to focus on areas of improvement or weakness or whatever you have a low score on. But that is not the right way. The right way is to start with what you're strong at. Do not ignore your strengths. Do not take them for granted. Something that you're strong at is a very important asset, and you want to nurture it, you want to further develop it, you want to maintain it, you want to make sure that it will always be with you. So you need to start the process by asking yourself, well, what is it that I'm very good at, that I'm very strong at? One last reason why you need to start with your strengths is because your strength in one element can help you improve in another element. I'll give you an example. If you have a high score on passion for diversity, that means you're excited about traveling, learning about people from other parts of the world, wanting to spend time with people from other parts of the world. That's something that you are passionate about. You have an interest in. Well, that passion for diversity makes it easier for you to improve your cosmopolitan outlook. So if you happen to have a relatively low score on cosmopolitan outlook, the fact that you have this strength will make it easier for you to read, to learn, to visit websites, to go and find people from different parts of the world, to improve your cosmopolitan outlook. And I'm sure you have noticed by now, the way that this course is designed is helping you improve your own global mindset by working with someone from another country, communicating with someone from another country. So the way that I've created this course, every step of this course itself is designed to improve various elements of your global mindset, even though the ultimate objective of the course is to improve your skills in cross-cultural communication. So there you have it. That's what this report is all about. I hope it's helpful to you. I'm going to pause and see if there's any questions or concerns.
No further questions.
All right. Well, there you have it, and perfect timing. I managed to do it all in 1 hour. Thank you very much. I want to thank you all for joining us. This session has been recorded.
Yes, sir.
And will be available to you and the other students who were unable to attend the session if they're interested. And again, if you have questions, don't be shy. Send questions on the discussion board, and one way or the other, you will get the answer from us. Thank you again, and have a good afternoon, morning, night, depending on what part of the world you're from. Thank you. Bye-bye.